Welcome to the Seraphine podcast. I'm Seraphine Arocha, and this is part 2 with Mr. Aaron Graham.
How we doing?
Our series on the Seraphine 7. This is the high range essentials to start a very awesome, dope, cool podcast like we have here.
Like the one that we're doing right here.
Yes. We're starting out, just like recapping from the last episode, we gave you 7 essentials, and we go into recording, we go into microphones, we go into cameras, lighting, headphones, soundproofing, and we also go into what we've been doing studio-wise. So you are somebody who's going to start a podcast. If you're starting out on a minimal budget, go to that first series, part 1 with me and Aaron. We tell you about the low budget options. This one is taking a step up, and Aaron is going to help me help you to have your most sexy high-end podcast that you can have with the money that hopefully you're making in that bank by being an influencer, right?
The cool thing is that you don't need every single high-end piece of equipment that we suggest. It's just you can piece together this to create a high quality
production.
Podcast. So
yeah, I feel like we've really kind of learned the things that we can cut corners on, but we're also understanding kind of what we're snobs about and what we really hold value with. Well, as we dive in today, we're going to start out with recording. And at this point in time, we are using the Rodecaster Pro, but that's going to be the last one because that's pretty high end. We'll start out with the Zoom H4 and the Zoom H6. So Aaron, talk to us a little bit about these.
Yeah, so I've used the Zoom H4n a few times for a couple of weddings. I haven't necessarily used it for podcasting, but that doesn't mean it's not usable for podcasts. I think it's actually very usable for podcasts, being the fact that it is one has XLR ports, so you can use a high-end microphone. You're not using the USB microphones like we're talking about in the budget, and it's portable. It's a lot more portable than the Rodecaster that we have.
Yeah.
So that's a plus. And then combined with that, so that one comes in around like $180. You can find it on Amazon. We'll link it in the description. And then the H6. So the H6 is a little more high-end over your H4. So your H4 has 2 XLR ports. So, of course, you and me could have a podcast on an H4. Mm-hmm. And then on the H6, you, me, and 2 other people because it has 4 XLR ports. So it's almost just
it's almost compatible with
except,
this.
Yes, but it's compatible with that as in how many ports it has for XLR ports. And it's portable. The downfall I think that this has is it does run, the H4 and the H6, they run on just regular batteries rather than being plugged in. But that could also be seen as a plus because it is portable. And then the last one, of course, is the Rodecaster. And I mean, this thing, as soon as I saw it drop, I was like, yeah, well, I'm buying it.
It's mine.
It just because it's all in one.
Yeah.
The sliders for the volume and for the gain, that's the word.
Yeah.
For the gain of the microphones are so simple. I'm looking at it now. So it has 4 sliders for, of course, your 4 XLR cables. And then you're able to phone in somebody Bluetooth. You have plug-inable buttons. So you can have like intro music. Yeah. You can upload different news portions, like if you want to add that into your podcast.
And you can record like straight from the board, right?
Record straight from the board.
On your computer,
you can plug the computer, or you can plug the Rodecaster into your computer. It's USB-C, so it's super fast. So I mean, it's endless opportunities with this Rodecaster. I mean, I love it. If you're gonna be serious about podcasting, go all in, go with this Rodecaster.
I really have seen why that this is so much better than especially for us too. Mm-hmm. I mean, batteries are my absolute nemesis. Yep. So for me, if I have an endless power source, I am good to go because I like to talk. So that's recording for you. Microphones. I
will say one thing with this board. The gain sliders, I would recommend getting a cloud lifter of some sort or an amplifier for your microphones. I was going to talk about that with the microphones that we're about to talk about, but I also saw the video on Rodecaster, and your volume knobs are going to be all the way up at the top, most likely. And if you had a cloud lifter, you wouldn't have to push your gain as much, and you won't have as much of a like hissy sound. So yes, cloud lifter for almost any device you use, just to reduce all the gain that you put on the microphone. So that's just a little tip.
So we're going to go into microphones next. The first one would be the Rode Pod mic. It's like $99, and I think it's the most budget friendly.
Yes, for sure. It's the most budget friendly for your anything basically over $100. I know it's $99, but with tax and whatever, it's usually about $100. So it falls into that low end of the high end.
Yes.
And I personally haven't used this mic, but I've done some research, and it's good. It's good. It's XLR, so you're getting that good audio quality with that. And I mean, but with microphones, it's really you get what you pay for. You know, with my tip that I said with the budget microphones, the closer you are to the mic, the better it's going to sound, and that goes with your studio. If it's a loud place, it's going to be kind of hard, but mostly with the pod mic, if you stay close, your voice is going to sound full. Your voice is going to sound good. So yes, the pod mic will do wonders, especially if you're coming from a USB mic. It's going to be just fine.
So the next in line is that Rode Procaster. That's like around like the $230
Yeah,
mark.
you find it on Amazon for about $230. And we personally used this, and I loved it.
Yeah.
The only thing, so I didn't know this. It does have an internal pop filter.
Oh, I didn't
We
know
had
that.
pop
Yeah.
filters.
Oh,
But I don't think the internal pop filter worked too much, because I had found myself having to edit out the plosives. And the plosives, for anybody who's watching this or listening to it, plosives are like your P's, your T's, anything that like just protrudes out of when you're talking. It cuts out. It's supposed to cut out on those things that will make your ears a little sensitive. It didn't do a great job, in my personal opinion. And that was really my only fuss with that mic.
yeah.
Other than, also, it didn't really make my voice sound as full as I wanted it to.
Yeah. The ones that we're on now, I mean, are just, they're the Shure SM7B, right?
Yes, the Joe Rogan microphone.
They are literally like the showboat mics, and I love the streamline of them. I mean, as soon as we got them, we were so excited to use them.
I'm pretty sure at most places you can get it for $3.99. If you're going serious about podcasting, this is the best mic you can get right now for the price. And like I said, you get what you pay for.
So as we move on, we go into cameras. And again, this is obviously something where this is where we can really spend money. And honestly, he and I are so itching. And we'll talk a little bit about our setup here. But
and granted, this only matters to you if you're doing a visual audio podcast. If you're not doing a visual podcast, this has nothing to do with how you should run your just audio podcast.
Yeah. Again, you can check out in this little segment.
You'll be saving some money.
You will.
But I would suggest an audio visual podcast, because if you do visual, that means you can upload it to more platforms and you get more eyes on it.
Exactly. And people will actually put a face with a name. So the first one would be, we can combine them.
Yeah, I wanted to combine them. So the Sony Alpha, so we're Sony on over here at the Seraphine podcast. Nothing against Canon, Nikon, Fuji, whatever. We are just going to give our Sony recommendations. There's plenty of replacements. If you don't like Sony, there is a camera that can compare with Canon, but we're just going to give you our Sony picks and combine these two. So the Sony a6400 and the Sony a6600. So both these cameras came out in 2020. Yeah, 2020. And they're big step ups because, one, they're small. So these are mirrorless cameras, and they're APS-C. The lenses are interchangeable. So that's another thing. We didn't add any lenses to this, so these are just the bodies. So the A6400 comes in about $889 on Amazon, and then the A6600 comes in about $1398. And the reason I like these cameras is they're not full frame, kind of like what we have with the A7R3 and the A7 III. They're a little bit smaller. But they have the same battery, so they can last just as long as the other ones. And the thing I like about these is they have a flippable. The screen finally flips out, and That took forever for Sony to finally make a camera where we can flip our screen up, because usually it was just tilted in the back. Finally, it can flip up. So you can, like, if I'm looking at this camera, I can see myself kind of like what we have with this camera.
Yeah.
So that's my reason for picking these two is one, portability, cheaper than the full frame, and you can adjust your LCD screen. They shoot any format that you want, 1080, 4K, whatever you want, they got it. Slow-mo, which you don't need for a podcast, but yeah, these are my top two picks for pretty reasonable prices. I mean, $898, Sony A6400, depends on your price point, but I think those two are good starting points for your mid to high range podcast. The only flaw that I see for recording a podcast on what's considered a camera versus a camcorder is there's a cutoff limit at 29 minutes. So they cut off at basically 30 minutes.
Okay.
So you have to just keep basically hitting the record button if you go longer than 30 minutes. That's the only thing. There is ways to get around it. You can have a monitor that you can put on these cameras and it'll work just fine. But the A7S III doesn't have a record limit anymore. The dynamic range on that camera is insane, but the body of the camera is also $3,000. So, I mean, it's give and take. That's our top of the line camera. We don't even have that. It's just the one that we would
love. I mean, honestly,
future.
Yeah. That is our future, our future baby. Now, to describe what we use now, and then you were talking to me a little bit about the why behind going to a better camera, because we have a really nice setup, but it really is about matching picture frames, right?
Yeah, so we have all Sony cameras in here, except one is a Sony camcorder versus the Sony Alpha family that we have. So the two Sony Alpha, we have the A7R III and the A7 III. Their picture profile is pretty similar, so I don't have to do a lot of color editing with that, but the camcorder that we got for the third camera, it's way off compared to what the other two shoot. So it is important to make sure that you're at least in the same family when it comes to if you're doing a multi-camera podcast. But if you're just doing a single camera, it doesn't matter. But
it works. It's just a little bit more labor intensive.
It's just one of those things. Like you pick and choose what is interchangeable. Like, do we need another camera? No. Would we like it? Yes. But we want to put our focus on other things right now. That stuff will come, and that's the thing with a podcast and these all this gear is things come with time. You don't necessarily need to go drop $10,000 on every single item that we say on this high end list. You should get some of the budget stuff, and then most budget stuff, and then get like a high-end microphone, because that's what's important with a podcast.
Exactly. The beauty about this too is that all of the Sony cameras that we are talking to you about, if you literally just Google the name of the Sony camera and say what is it like in the Canon family or or the Fuji family, it'll bring up a list of it. So definitely take what we've got. But if you are somebody who's a hardcore Icon fan or whatever, that's where you go. So as we move on, we go into lighting, and I am definitely someone who in the beginning I didn't know much about lighting, but now it's probably one of my more I can see now where I want to get more lighting. I'm more interested in what the ability is of the lights we purchase. So the first one would be the newer bicolor 480 and the newer 530 RGB. These are like the first one's around $160. The other one's right around $230. The first one, the bicolor, it includes like a 2-pack of dimmable light kit, RGB, and color change features. The second one, the 530, it still has that dimmable light kit, and it just has more LED lights, bigger panels, and like change of lighting colors. Have you worked with either of these?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what we have. Newer is a pretty budget-friendly option, so most of them are pretty interchangeable. It just depends, like most of it depends on your budget and what works for your studio. I don't think the RGB color changing is necessary for a podcast. I mean, could be cool to be creative like that, but the most important thing is that you're able to adjust your white balance. So that's the most important thing with that. But I think the thing that I want for future studios, the Aperture 120D. And the reason I say that is I remember I said in the budget ones that LED panels are better than like light bulbs.
Yeah.
Well, there makes an exception once you get past a certain price point.
Yeah.
Because this Aperture 120D, I mean, it produces crazy amount of light. For this studio space, we would only need one.
Yeah.
The only downfall is the price. I mean, it's expensive. So it's almost $800 for just one light kit. When most of these come in around the newer 530 comes in at $230 and the other one comes in at $160, and those come with 2 lights. But this does the work of more than 2 lights from newer. It creates 30,000 lumens, super powerful. It's quiet, and the heat isn't as bad. That's the good thing with these light LED panels, is that it doesn't get too hot like in the budget ones where we had the light bulbs.
Yeah.
Those would get really warm.
So like soft boxes. Do you need one for this?
For the Aperture?
Yeah.
Yes. So
Okay.
you want a soft box because if you think about it, it's just basically putting a shade over the sun.
Okay.
So
All
it
right,
diffuses the light,
Yeah.
so you don't have harsh shadows, and the softbox will protrude the light in multiple different directions. I think if you don't have the softbox on, it's basically like a spotlight. It's just direct. It's not exactly like a spotlight, but it's pretty direct, and it's really harsh. So Aperture 120D is our future pick for our future studio.
It's goals.
Yeah.
It's goals. So we move on now to the ever evasive headphones. I'm going to have Aaron kind of go into this because, again, I have been somebody who I love music. I love listening to really involved sound. But again, when you're doing a podcast, it's not necessary. We're not creating music here unless you're a music podcast. But Aaron will kind of dive into this.
Like I said with our budget episode, headphones are kind of very depending on the user.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need crazy expensive headphones to run a good podcast, but it is good to have a decent sounding headphone. So that's the most important thing. So since we are in our mid to high range, we wanted to research and see how expensive do headphones go? We're not saying you need these, but it does come down to comfortability. So our picks were the Beyerdynamic DT770. So these, I've heard of Beyerdynamic since I got into gaming because I wanted these headphones. They look aesthetically pleasing. They have a soft plush on the ear, so it just looks like it'd be comfortable. And then the Beyerdynamic 990s. So these two, they are very expensive for when it comes to headphones. So the Beyerdynamics are about $159, and then the 990s, and then the 770s are $159. So that's the hard thing is with headphones is they're around the same price. I would just say what fits your head, because everyone's head shape is different and everyone's ear shape is different. So I would just go with what fits your head, what fits your ears, and if you can wear it for longevity. Because
well, and the other thing too is you've got to think about a few things. For me, it was about I like to literally feel like I'm in a pod. Mm-hmm. So I love my whole ear just to be encompassed and almost I know it sounds weird, but almost like a suction cup on my ear. Some people can't handle that. They need a little bit more breathable.
Some people like to where they can hear, so it's not so much noise canceling. They want an open faced where you are able to hear what's happening outside of you.
Yeah.
But it just, like I said, it's all dependent on you as a podcaster and what your vibe is for your guests and everything like that.
Yeah. And also I think when I think about headphones, I also think about being in the moment. And that's why the sound canceling for me, especially because I have my dogs and I have, air conditioners and life go on because my studio's in my house. I love the fact that as soon as I put these on, it's literally just me and my guest in my chair. So I think I'll be the one to say have some fun with headphones, because I think it really creates an awesome experience for you also as a host. So then we go into soundproofing. So soundproofing, we've got the acoustic matte DMD Stagger acoustic panel. You can get an 8-pack for around $347. Off Amazon, though, there are some crazy websites. Acoustic Matte website is one of them. You can customize your color, the size, the shape. Honestly, my goal is as we keep podcasting, I would love to have a studio where the soundproofing is not just soundproofing, but it's visually cool and pleasing to look at. Yeah. Because let me tell you, this has done its business, but at the end of the day, it literally is just black squares.
Yeah, I think the cool thing with the Acoustic Mac is, like you said, it's customizable. So you can add like art panels, but it's still soundproofing. So I'm looking at the website right now. They have so many options and shapes for you to design your room or your studio how you want it. I think it's if you're going all in, I mean, this is the high end. This is what you need. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's aesthetically pleasing. They have so many different price points, but it is going to be more expensive than what you can get on an Amazon, and more expensive than like the foam panels that we have. These are going to be the real deal.
And permanent. I mean, they really have a permanence to them. What we have on our wall literally are like Velcro strips to pop off. And I mean, they've done their job, but there have been mid-interview to where one of them have literally popped off in an interview. Yeah. So, I mean, you get what you pay for. They do the job, but in the next breath, if you're going to take it to that next level, which this whole podcast is about leveling up your podcast, I say go for it. So yeah. The next one we're talking about is the studio. I mean, we're talking about going from like a 12 by 12 to a 24 by 24 room. Again, we've talked about like having a hobby unit. In our first episode, we definitely talked about a few places where you can rent a space. Ideally, though, if you can get an office space or have your own studio, right now, me and my husband are looking at moving, and frankly, I'm looking at a studio space in home, but off from my home. The one thing I will tell you is having a studio space in your home, if you have guests come over, if you have a lot of equipment, I mean, it's like having your office at work right in the middle of your house. Mm-hmm. From wires to cameras to all of our equipment. I mean, this room, if I gave you like a full tour of it, it is. I mean, we've got little pockets of junk everywhere. So to have an actual studio is the end game for me. We're going on almost 1 year here at the Seraphine podcast. And, for us, it was about sharing what we've learned, our knowledge. Erin, do you have any, just final thoughts in terms of what you've kind of learned and like what you feel like would be a priority for us in the future?
I mean, for us, as a podcast, I think we've talked multiple times about what we want to put our money towards to improving our podcast. For sure, the Cloud Lifter. So the Cloud Lifter, I would almost say it as an essential thing because it's number one, because a podcast isn't good unless you have good audio. Yeah. And this will help our audio out even more than what we have right now. And I think our audio is pretty decent. Next would be fixing the camera issue. Yeah. And that's only essential because we run an audio-visual podcast. So what comes next after audio is visual. So we want to have matching visuals. And then lighting. So with that, so the camera and the lighting with that, those two hand in hand. So I think we're definitely on the right track. Excuse me. We don't have everything. No. We're not experts. We're just giving you guys the tips we're just giving you guys what we have learned from our past mistakes and what we've taken from the last year doing this, and want to give you guys an easier start than what we've had.
Oh yeah, because it was a bumpy ride, and I'm glad that I'm glad I have you as my producer, because again, when you do this, you think, like when I first started, I was like, oh yeah, we just get a couple mics. And no, you start to really begin to, if you fall in love with it with the way I have, I just want it to be excellent. So you want the knowledge, you want somebody who's worked with the equipment before. I know that for me, my learning curve was huge because I had no background whatsoever in production. And to have someone like Aaron, who has done something similar, has got a photography background, who is interested in sound. These are the things that honestly, if you're going to go forward with this and you're really thinking about longevity, think about partnering up with someone. I think that's the thing that we didn't put in the 7 essentials is find yourself an Aaron, because you need a partner in crime if you want to have more of a stylized, beautiful production. I mean, I like to put things out into the world that I'm proud of. I think everybody does, instead of just putting it out there to put it out there. So hopefully this has helped you out, and I wish you well in your podcast journey. And please hit us below with comments, questions. We'd love to share what we've learned with you. I hope this has helped a great deal to you. And again, hit the click, the like, subscribe button. It helps us out. And if you create something, we'll follow you back. Thanks so much.